Dear viewers, today I bring you Margaret the Magnificent, but not really. Long before she was the self-declared queen of the hair throne, Margaret Moyo was a beautiful but loud child in a quiet village, a mismatched soul wrapped in second-hand dresses and grand delusions. She was born in Gutu, in a round hut with a thatched roof and a cow named Sarudzai that mooed at inappropriate moments, including during her mother's labor. From her first cry, which sounded more like a war cry than a baby's wail, Margaret made her presence known. "Ah, this one," the village midwife muttered, "has arrived with opinions." Her mother, my Judith, was a stern woman with arms like grinding stones and eyes that could make a grown man apologize for sneezing. She believed in discipline, boiled maize, and the holy wrath of God. Her father, Baba Moyo, was a part-time preacher and full-time coward who spent more time avoiding conflict than preaching against it. "Margarita," my Judith would shout from across the yard. "Why are you applying mud to your face like a spirit medium?" "It's not mud, Mama. It's fashion." She was 6. At church, Margaret refused to sing the same chorus as everyone else. She insisted on performing a solo, whether the choir wanted it or not. "We don't do solos during Jesu in Defunga, Margaret," the choir leader said. "Well, you should. People must hear my voice." By age 10, she had organized a fashion show using her cousins as unwilling models. The outfits were made of maize sacks, dyed with different wildflower petals and mango juice. Her youngest cousin tripped on a hem and fell face first into a chicken coop. "Fashion is pain," she announced, undeterred. "Just wait until Paris calls." By 13, she was already known for two things, drama and declarations. When her crush, Tonderai, gave an orange to another girl at school, Margaret staged a fainting episode during morning prayer. "Life is not worth living," she groaned, arms splayed across the dusty classroom floor. "Let death take me." The teacher stepped over her. "Margaret, get up and fetch the chalk." She did, but only after sighing like a Shakespearean widow. Her first suspension came at 15, when she led a protest demanding real toilet paper at school. It was after she discovered toilet paper at her rich aunt's house in the city during the holidays. All along she grew up using old newspapers or leaves instead. She made placards from exercise books and accused the headmaster of being toilet insensitive. "We demand dignity," she shouted, standing on a classroom desk. "We are not animals." Her father wept. Her mother dragged her home by the ear. "Where do you get these ideas?" Margaret blinked. "I read, and also, I think." "That's the problem," her mother snapped. "Girls like you shouldn't think so much. You'll never get a husband." Margaret pouted. "Maybe I don't want a husband. Maybe I want a salon." Her mother gasped like she'd confessed to witchcraft. "A salon? For hair? You think your ancestors died in the Liberation War so you can curl people's scalps?" But it was too late. Margaret had a dream, and it smelled of cocoa butter lotion, her own homemade mango hair lotion, hair relaxer, and heated ambition. She left for Masvingo at 18, head held high and suitcase dragging behind her like a reluctant sibling. Inside were 5 pairs of shoes, none of which fit properly, a broken hairdryer she hoped to fix, and a laminated certificate from a beauty course she took by mail. She swore to herself, "One day, I will be known. Margaret Moyo will be magnificent." She paused. Actually, Margaret the Magnificent, that sounds right. If Margaret Moyo ruled her salon like a queen, then Minamo was the kingdom's irritating neighbor, the one with a shinier throne, cheaper prices, and better customer service. Minamo's salon, Hair to Heaven, sat just 2 blocks away from gorgeous you, but only if you're me. It had a proper sign, working air conditioning, and, most offensive of all, free Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, Margaret scoffed when she heard. So now people are Googling their hair instead of trusting me. She decided to confront the enemy head-on. Dressed in her tightest jeans and a leopard print blouse that had long lost its elasticity, she stormed into Hair to Heaven during peak hours. Customers stared mid-blow-dry. Minamo, in a soft blue uniform and kitten heels, didn't even flinch. Well, she said with a smile too sweet to be sincere. "If it isn't Masvingo's own Tyra Drinks, retired version." Margaret forced a smile. "I just came to see if the rumors were true. That you were using Brazilian products made in Chitungwiza." Gasps erupted. One client dropped her mobile device. "These are imported," Minamo snapped. Just because you use expired shampoo doesn't mean we all do. Margaret tilted her head. Expired. Darling, it's called fermented beauty. You wouldn't understand, it's advanced science. From that day on, war was declared. Clients began comparing experiences. At Mo's, the towels were warm. At Margaret's, the towels were damp and cold with stains, room temperature with personality. At Mo's, clients left feeling like queens. At Margaret's, they left with mild trauma and a free rose-scented tissue. One day, a mutual client defected mid-braid. Half her head belonged to Margaret. The other half, freshly done by Mo. You're going to her, Margaret screamed. You want to walk around looking like a map of betrayal. The client fled, cape still on. Margaret started spreading rumors. I hear Mo uses cooking oil to make your hair shiny. Sunfoil, you smell like fried fish and heartbreak. Mo hit back with a customer loyalty card that offered every fifth braid for free. Margaret retaliated with a hastily written sign that read, braids now with extra pain, guaranteed to last. She hired a DJ to play extremely loud music outside her salon. Unfortunately, it was her nephew, DJ and High, who only owned one speaker and kept playing the same dancehall rhythm on loop. Make it stop, a customer once screamed under the dryer. Never, mind your own business, you came for a hairdo not to monitor my music. Margaret roared. Then came the ultimate insult. One afternoon, Margaret spotted a group of women walking toward Hair to Heaven, each of them wearing a t-shirt that read, good hair, good service, not Margaret. Margaret collapsed in her chair, hand over her heart. The audacity, the disrespect, the branding. She marched to her printer and typed her own slogan. Beauty by fire, because diamonds are made under pressure. Below, in smaller text. We are not affiliated with that other salon. The battle raged on for years. Snide Facebook posts, mysterious sabotage, someone once poured vinegar into a relaxer jar, and loud prayer sessions to cast out the spirits of jealousy from the next street over. But in truth, Mo wasn't Margaret's real enemy. Margaret was. Because deep down, every time she lost a customer, she didn't blame the cheaper prices or the nicer chairs. She blamed herself. But only for a second. Then she put on her leopard blouse and told the mirror, they'll miss me when I'm gone. Her first husband Farai was a gentleman. A literature teacher at a local high school, he wore glasses that always slid down his nose and quoted Shakespeare unironically. Margaret met him at church. He was reciting 1 Corinthians 13 during Bible study, and she decided on the spot that he was both holy and husband material. I need a man of God, she whispered to her best friend, Cece Varazzo, but not the broke kind. I want psalms and pay slips. Within weeks, they were a couple. Farai brought her flowers every Sunday and always said, please, and, thank you, traits Margaret initially found charming. But the charm wore off. Why do you always speak so politely? She asked one evening over rice and stewed chicken. Are you rehearsing to leave me gently? And please stop buying me flowers, I'm not a bee, buy me chicken and chips. Farai blinked. No, I was just saying grace. Still, Margaret pressed on. She called the pastor. She staged a prayer session. She even claimed she'd had a vision that they were destined to marry. The Lord showed me your face in a bowl of porridge, she declared. That's a sign. They married 6 months later in a modest ceremony with too many speeches and not enough chicken, rice and the famous coleslaw salad. Margaret wore white, again, claiming, purity comes in many forms, including fresh outfits. At first, it was bliss. Farai tried to create peace. He bought her poetry books, left sweet notes in her purse, and introduced her to herbal teas with names like Tranquility and Zen in a cup. But Margaret did not do tranquility, she wanted the strong waters, gin, brandy, whiskey, or at least fizzy drinks. Teas were for Ma salad. Things started to unravel when he casually mentioned his female co-worker. Mrs. Ndlovu said she liked my lesson plan on African feminism, he said one day. Margaret dropped her teacup. Feminism, with another woman, at your school. She's 60, Margaret. She walks with a cane. Margaret's nostrils flared. That's how they get you. Playing weak and wise like some kind of seductive owl. She marched into his school the next day during assembly, wearing a full church robe and carrying anointing oil. She walked straight to the front and shouted, "Where is the Jezebel limping around, trying to seduce my husband with her lesson plans?" Students cheered. Teachers froze. Mrs. Ndlovu wept. The incident made the local paper. The headline read, "Wife wages war on wisdom, teacher accused of witchcraft and wiggle." Farai was suspended for 2 weeks and Margaret blamed the Ministry of Education for enabling emotional infidelity through PowerPoint slides. At home, the fights got worse. "Farai, I had a dream you were reading poetry to a woman with long nails. Explain yourself. I was asleep next to you all night." "Exactly, and dreaming adulterously." He tried mediation. She accused the counselor of liking his smile too much. "You don't smile like that for me," she shouted mid-session. "That's because you threw my toothpaste out this morning." It was smirking at me. Eventually, Farai stopped quoting Shakespeare. He started quoting Job. He began spending more time at school. Margaret began accusing his colleagues of everything from voodoo to veganism. Only a wicked woman eats Kovo. One Sunday, she showed up at school with a casserole and a bottle of holy water, only to find Farai sitting in an empty classroom grading papers. She threw the casserole at the wall. He cleaned the wall. That night, Farai wrote a poem in his journal. Her love was lightning. Unpredictable, powerful. And it burned the house down. He filed for divorce the next morning. Margaret, when served the papers, told the officer, "Of course he's leaving. I'm too real for weak men with reading glasses." She posted on Facebook that night, "Some men want peace. I want passion. Let him go enjoy his boring poetry and wrinkled Jezebels." Farai later remarried a quiet dentist named Susan, who preferred crossword puzzles to chaos. Margaret declared, "She'll die of boredom. Or toothpaste overdose." Townder was a man of few words and even fewer surprises. His life revolved around 3 constants: fixing cars, eating sadza, and watching football. His idea of a romantic gesture was bringing home a slightly used spark plug, proudly declaring, "Look, it's almost new." Margaret, ever the romantic, yearned for passionate debates and grand declarations of love. She believed that a real relationship was forged in the fires of spirited arguments and dramatic reconciliations. Townder's stoic nature was, to her, a challenge, a puzzle she was determined to solve. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Margaret couldn't contain her frustration. "Why are you so quiet? Are you thinking about other women?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. Townder looked up from his plate, startled. "I was thinking about carburetors," he replied cautiously. "Liar, you want to leave me like everyone else," she accused, her voice rising. The next morning, Townder found his cherished wrench set scattered across the front yard, glinting in the sunlight like metallic confetti. The door was locked, and Margaret's voice echoed from inside, "Maybe now you'll learn to express yourself." Their marriage lasted 6 tumultuous months. The official reason for the divorce was listed as emotional neglect. Margaret's personal reason: he didn't argue enough. A real man fights for love. Absolutely. Let's continue Margaret's roller coaster romance with Simba, weaving in humor, personality, and more cultural texture. Simba was a creature of the asphalt, heavyset, gravel-voiced, and happiest when the highway stretched ahead for miles. His cab was his sanctuary, buckle-in seats worn soft as old leather, a dashboard cluttered with charger cables, empty soda cans, and greasy chip crumbs. He drove through potholes like a champion hurdler, cursing each bump in an endearing grumble. Margaret caught sight of him on the dusty road to Zambia, a giant among trucks, windows rolled down, country music blasting. She lifted her thumb and hoped the engine roaring toward her had room for one more. It did. She had one plan: hit Lusaka, buy premium hair care products for her buzzing salon back in Harare, and return triumphant. Instead, she became official highway girlfriend, a title she claimed with pride and rolled right past Zambia into Tanzania. Simba never questioned why she tagged along. Silent companionship outweighed empty arguments. By the time they eased back into Harare 6 weeks later, Margaret had no designer shampoos, but she did have a small surprise, a little one growing in her belly, and a makeshift marriage certificate. They'd exchanged vows in an impromptu roadside ceremony by a baobab tree, officiated by the truck's CB radio operator, over and out. One hot evening at home, Margaret finally burst. "You think I don't know what truck drivers do? You have a woman at every toll gate. Simba didn't flinch. He took a wet chip from his pocket, chewed thoughtfully, and replied. Margaret, my truck breaks down every 50 kilometers. Who has the time? It wasn't the reassurance she'd hoped for. To prove her point, Margaret staged a dramatic stomachache after lunch, moaning, bending double, clutching pillows. Simba, loyal and alarmed, dialed an ambulance. She rode the siren to the ER, and waited, only to be diagnosed with constipation. He paced the waiting room in disbelief. When she emerged, cured, she found him on his cell, talking to a lawyer. Yes, I'd like to discuss. Bedroom disputes, he mumbled. Terms of their marriage grew stranger by the day. Why did it all fall apart? Her expectations versus his reality. Margaret craved fireworks, Simba delivered lullaby drives and breakdown blues. Communication breakdown, her confrontations ended in silence or chip-crumbed retorts, never heart to heart. Drama so draining it needed a lawyer. Stomach pains, sirens, and legal advisors made it feel more like a sitcom than a marriage. They parted ways shortly after the baby was born, quietly, with mutual relief and one shared suitcase. The official reason, incompatible aspirations. Margaret's own version, he never once asked how I felt. Just how full the fuel tank was. Tinashe was the gentle gardener who believed that love was like a well-tended garden, water it with kindness, and peace would bloom. He whispered to his friends when he courted Margaret. If this goes wrong, attend my funeral in silence. They all laughed nervously, picturing the irony. Before the roses even bloomed properly, Margaret found fault. One sunny afternoon, Tinashe brought home tomatoes from his favorite vendor at the market. Why did you buy tomatoes from her? Margaret snapped as the bright red fruit sat on the counter. You want her tomatoes, eh? You want her. Tinashe, ever the peacemaker, simply sighed and replied, they looked ripe, hon. But deep down, he felt the sting of suspicion that followed him from the past. Tinashe tried his best, filling the garden with dahlias, pruning the avocado tree, singing soft Shona lullabies as he watered seedlings. But every clump of soil he turned, every vine he tied, felt like yet another accusation waiting to erupt. He always trimmed the shrubs at 8 p.m., so you're hiding behind the bushes at night. He always watered with the hose on the terrace, so you can sneak phones out. He even once whistled while planting leeks and was asked, who are you whistling for? Exhausted by the constant suspicion, Tinashe drifted emotionally. One evening, feeling utterly invisible, he crossed a line, not out of passion, but sheer desperation for warmth and escape. He slept with a colleague from the community garden group. When Margaret found out, she slapped him, screamed, and locked him out, 3 times that week. He returned once more, bruised ego and spirit, and said flatly, well, I might as well enjoy the crime. Why it fell apart. He loved quietly, she demanded chaos. Tinashe brought peace, Margaret chased drama. Trust was a weed they never removed. Her accusations infected every sweet moment. Exhaustion overtook integrity. After endless tension, he chose escape, and betrayal. Among the shattered flower pots and broken vows, their love wilted in the garden's soil. The divorce papers listed, irreconcilable differences. Margaret's version, he wouldn't argue, so he cheated. A real man fights, or at least stands by at midnight when she's yelling. Before she was Margaret the Magnificent, she was just Margaret, an overly dramatic child with a piercing scream and a gift for turning minor inconveniences into national disasters. Born in 1980, just as Zimbabwe gained independence, Margaret entered the world during a thunderstorm. According to her mother, she didn't cry like a normal baby. She shouted, my Marufu said. She looked at me, raised one fist in the air, and screamed like she was accusing me of something. Even as a toddler, Margaret was theatrical. She refused to crawl. A queen does not crawl, she is carried. I bet that's what she's saying, said her disappointed mother. Her older brothers quickly learned to avoid her tantrums. If she wasn't given the bigger piece of chicken, she'd faint dramatically. If someone stepped on her toy, she would accuse them of witchcraft. In school, she was a gifted child, gifted in the art of arguing. Her teachers learned to avoid eye contact when asking questions. One memorable afternoon in grade 3, the teacher asked for examples of mammals. Dogs, cows, and, she paused. Margaret's hand shot up. My Auntie Tendai. The class gasped. The teacher stammered. Margaret stood confidently. She gives birth. She has breasts. She talks too much. Classic mammal behavior. She was sent home with a letter. At age 11, she wrote a love letter to her math teacher, Mr. Dube. He was 36. The letter read, "When I look at long division, I see us, separated, but still connected. Please consider my application for future marriage." Her parents considered boarding school. Mr. Dube transferred. Teenage Margaret was no easier. She was both beautiful and terrifying, tall, sharp-tongued, and suspicious of anyone who smiled too long. By 15, she had written off all her classmates as jealous, ugly, or possessed. She joined the church choir not because she loved God, but because she liked being the loudest soprano. "Sing softly," the choir leader once whispered. "Softly, is this a funeral or worship?" She shouted, "Give the Lord full volume." At 18, she ran away from home for a week because her mother refused to let her wear a tight red jumpsuit which displayed cleavage to youth fellowship. "I am not a spiritual prisoner," she declared, marching into the night with nothing but lip gloss and an onion roll. She returned 3 days later after discovering prayer camp did not provide lunch. Despite the drama, Margaret was smart. She passed her O-levels and got a job at a salon as an apprentice. It was there, armed with curlers and ambition, that she decided to open her own business. "I don't need school, I have style," she said. "And if I can do my own eyebrows, I can run a salon." By age 22, she had opened Gorgeous You But Only If You're Me, with a borrowed hairdryer, a cousin's couch, and 3 bottles of mango lotion. And she never looked back. Her mother once asked her, "Margaret, why are you always so much?" Margaret sipped from a wine glass filled with Fanta and replied, "Because life is not a rehearsal. And if I'm going to be miserable, I'll do it in full color." At the age of 32, armed with nothing but delusion and a pink folder full of blank papers, Margaret decided the nation needed her. "If these fools in government can talk nonsense and still get paid, why not me?" she announced at the salon. "What position are you running for?" asked my Tichena, her hair half done. "MP. For Macheke West, I will be the people's voice. Also, I need a new car." She launched her campaign under the slogan, "Margaret for Magnificence." Her campaign logo featured her own face surrounded by flames and a hairdryer. Her manifesto included free wigs for all single mothers, mandatory silence hours for children under 10, the banning of ex-husbands from speaking in public. When asked about economic policy, she replied, "Simple. We just tell China to send more money. Problem solved." Her campaign trail was chaotic. She insulted a sitting councillor during a debate. "You look like an unpaid electricity bill," she yelled, banging the table. At one rally, she attempted to hand out mango lotion samples but the sun melted them. Children ran home covered in yellow goo, screaming, "Auntie Margaret burned us." Her posters were removed the next day by the council, not for indecency, but for spelling errors. One read, "Vote Margaret. For leadership and perfect visions." The final blow came during a radio interview. When asked about water shortages, she said, "The people must learn to be grateful for any form of moisture. Even tears." She came dead last in the vote tally. Even she didn't vote for herself. "Rigged," she shouted. "This is witchcraft and tribalism." Margaret's relationship with technology was like her relationships with men, tense, loud, and ending in broken screens. She bought a smartphone in 2021 and named it Sexy Samsung. Within a week, she'd accidentally sent a voice note of herself snoring to her pastor, used a dog face filter for her ID photo, started a Facebook Live during a fight with a bread vendor. "Who is watching me? The phone keeps blinking. Is this the FBI?" she screamed, throwing it into the toilet. She once tried to use Siri. "Siri, how do I find a rich man?" "I'm not sure I understand," Siri replied. Margaret slapped the phone. "You understand what you want, you loose robot." She typed in all caps and signed every message with her name. "Come home now. I am hungry, Margaret." She downloaded a dating app but got banned within 2 days for threatening a man who said, "Hey," without punctuation. This app is full of perverts and cowards, she declared. One day, she pressed a wrong button and ended up in a Zoom meeting for goat farmers in Matabeleland. She stayed the full hour. I may not have goats, she said, unmuted, but I have opinions. When Margaret joined the Macheke Residents Association WhatsApp group, there was peace, order, and polite exchanges about potholes. That ended immediately. Her first message. WHO stole my chicken from the fridge last night. I am not okay. The group admin replied, this is not the family group, Sister Margaret. She refused to be silenced. She sent long voice notes that always began with, I don't want to cause drama, but. She circulated fake news, everything from, drinking mazo causes infertility, to, council wants to arrest everyone who owns a red bucket. She used GIFs aggressively and once posted a blurry screenshot of a meme that simply read, my enemies shall fall, good morning. The final straw came during a funeral coordination chat. Someone asked, who will bring ice? Margaret replied, why are we always so obsessed with cold things at funerals? We should be mourning, not having a braai. She was removed from the group. I don't need them, she muttered. Let them drown in lukewarm stupidity. But she made a new group immediately. Real Macheke warriors, no cowards allowed. It had one member. Her. Raising 3 children under the iron slipper of Margaret was less parenting and more survival training. Tendai, the eldest, learned early to become invisible. Make no sudden movements, he once told a cousin. She senses fear. By 12, he could do dishes, sweep, and vanish into thin air. When Margaret argued with the landlord about rent, Tendai walked backwards out of the room like a magician in retreat. Where's that boy? She would shout, but he had perfected the art of ghosting before smartphones made it fashionable. Rumbidzai, middle child and eternal rebel, didn't just talk back, she declared war. Mom, you're being dramatic, she once dared say. Margaret threw herself on the floor like a defeated Victorian queen. You want me dead, you want to bury me before my time. Then get off the floor, Rumby replied, stepping over her and grabbing a drink. Margaret's friends said, this one will be pregnant by 16. Instead, Rumby was top of her class and left home for Cape Town as soon as she could. Cape Town is far, her mother muttered. Not far enough, Rumby whispered on the plane. Blessing, the youngest, was delicate and silent. His eyes constantly scanned the room like a meerkat. His motto, don't breathe too loudly. He once forgot to replace the toilet roll. Margaret accused him of being a lazy socialist. Do you think this is a 5-star hotel? Where's your sense of contribution? Blessing climbed out the bathroom window and spent the night under a neighbor's veranda. Despite the chaos, the children loved each other. They had a WhatsApp group named, Refugees of Margaret. Every Mother's Day, they debated who would risk calling. Do we call or text this year? Rumby once asked. Text, and turn off blue ticks, said Tendai. Pray for my phone battery, added Blessing. It began innocently. The church choir was short a lead vocalist for a Sunday crusade. Margaret volunteered. Sister Margaret, can you sing soprano? Asked the choir director. I am soprano, she replied. They regretted it instantly. At the first rehearsal, Margaret insisted on a solo, then sang a 10-minute remix of Jehovah is Mighty, complete with ad-libs, interpretive dance, and a long weeping section. It's not about me, she sobbed. It's about him. By the third rehearsal, half the choir had quit. She replaced them with backup dancers from her salon. Jesus loves excellence, she said, while instructing them to twerk at the chorus drop. Her performance at the crusade included smoke effects, 3 outfit changes, and an auto-tuned microphone. Half the congregation left, the other half filmed it. By the end of the week, her music video, filmed on her phone and edited by her neighbor's cousin, went viral. The title, Holy Fire, Margaret Unleashed. It had 73,000 views in 2 days and 2,000 confused comments. Is this gospel or witchcraft? She threatened Satan like he owes her rent. Despite the fame, Margaret's church asked her to take a musical sabbatical. You're too powerful, the pastor said gently. She nodded. I understand. They're not ready for my anointing. Margaret believed in justice. Specifically, her justice. She had been to small claims court more times than most lawyers. Over the years, she sued her ex-husband for emotional noise, her hair supplier for delivering lazy weaves, her neighbor's child for staring too long, the city council for stealing her water pressure. One memorable case, Margaret versus Blessing school principal. They gave my son 3/10 for an essay. She shouted in court, "Have you seen his handwriting? He writes like a royal scribe." The topic was the importance of humility, and he wrote one sentence. The judge replied, "Yes," it said, "my mother is never wrong. That's truth, not failure." Another time, she sued a church usher who blocked her from sitting in the front row. He said it was for tithers only. Does he know how many tithe-paying husbands I've had? She lost every case. The judge began greeting her with, "What now, Margaret?" Her last court appearance was for slapping a teenager who called her a bit extra. "I object," she screamed. "That is character defamation." The judge sighed. "Margaret, please just go home." "I will, but know this, history absolves the fabulous." Margaret lives alone in the same pink salon-turned-storage unit. Her salon chair squeaks less, mostly because it's broken. She talks to her plants, the only ones who listen, and practices new conspiracy theories about who's really behind the bad hair days. She's a local legend, a cautionary tale, and the subject of many exaggerated stories told over cold beer. Tendai. The stealthiest child grew into a stealthy accountant in Harare. He's married, has 2 children, and has blocked all family WhatsApp groups. His ringtone is, "Don't stop believin'," a private joke he never shares. Occasionally, he sends money home with a text, for groceries. Don't spend on hair products. Margaret suspects the latter is a conspiracy. Rumbidzai. Rumbi owns a successful beauty salon in Cape Town under a new surname. She is quietly proud of her business but has a strict policy, no clients with pink hair. She once sent a postcard to Margaret. It said only, "Nice try." Margaret keeps it framed next to her mango lotion. Blessing. Blessing graduated with honors and got a scholarship to Canada. He lives in Toronto, where he works in tech and volunteers at a local soup kitchen. His postcards home are blank. Family says he's practicing the art of silence. Occasionally, he calls, usually to ask for password resets or money. Tinashe. Margaret's last husband moved away quietly with a small suitcase and a big sigh. He remarried, lives in a suburb where no one knows about Margaret's theatrics, and attends church regularly, preferably one without music. When asked about Margaret, he just shrugs, "She's unforgettable." Mai Tichena. Margaret's former client and now her fiercest critic, Mai Tichena runs a haircare blog exposing salon disasters. She occasionally posts pictures labeled, "How Not to Do Hair." Margaret once threatened legal action. Mai Tichena laughed and renamed a post, "Margaret's Masterpieces." The Macheke Residents Association. After Margaret's WhatsApp reign of terror, the group instituted a strict no-shouting policy. They now communicate exclusively via polite email newsletters. Margaret tried to start a new group but is permanently banned. The neighborhood kids crossed the street when they saw her. The church ladies whispered behind her back. Even stray dogs changed direction when she approached. One day, as she ranted to a disinterested market vendor about her ungrateful, demon-spawned children, the vendor sighed and said, "Sister, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you." Margaret gasped like she'd swallowed a lizard. "How dare you? I am a good woman." The vendor shrugged. "Then why is everyone running?" Eventually, Margaret could no longer afford her salon or her rent. Her prized throne, an ancient salon chair, was repossessed by a man with one shoe and no remorse. With nowhere to go, she packed her belongings into black plastic bags and boarded a bus to her rural village in Gutu. She hadn't spoken to her relatives in years, but she told herself they'd be thrilled to see her. They weren't. Hey, Margaret, her cousin muttered, "You're still alive." She moved into a crumbling hut that smelled of goats and regret. She fetched water from the borehole. She cooked on firewood. She muttered to herself about ungrateful children, cheating husbands, and women who stole avocados from her tree. The villagers whispered, Margaret came back broke. Even pride left her behind. At night, she sat alone, swatting mosquitoes and staring at the stars. "Maybe I was too harsh," she murmured. "Maybe, just maybe, I should have let Townder eat his sadza in peace. Loud, angry, and absolutely convinced she was the victim. Margaret may never have been magnificent the way she dreamed, but in Macheke, she's unforgettable. I hope you enjoyed the story. Until next time, keep smiling. Please subscribe to my channel, like, leave a comment and share. Stay blessed.